Namaskar, hello and welcome viewers. You're watching the special presentation of Sansad TV, Bills and Acts, where we analyze bills that impact you, acts that empower you and programs that matter to you. I'm your host KRITI MISHRA, and today the spotlight is on the Forest Conservation Amendment Bill 2023. Before the analysis, let's take a look at the highlights. The Forest Conservation Amendment Bill 2023 was introduced in the Lok Sabha on March 29, 2023. The bill adds and exempts certain types of land from the purview of the Act. Further, it expands the list of activities permitted to be carried out on forest land. So, why did we need this amendment? Well, the total forest and tree cover of the country is around 80.9 million hectares, which is 24.62% of the geographical area of the country. They provide a range of important ecosystem services, such as protecting against soil erosion, regulating the water cycle, and serving as a home for a wide variety of plant and animal species. But forests in India are also under threat from a range of activities, including illegal logging, mining, and land conversion for agriculture and urban development. Environment Minister Bhupendra Yadav introduced an amendment bill in the Lok Sabha during the budget session that seeks to bring clarity to the country's forest conservation law and exempt certain categories of lands from its purview to fast-track strategic and security-related projects of national importance. The bill was then sent to a joint committee of both houses of Parliament. And for deeper insights on the topic, I'm joined by an illustrious panel of guests. Joining us in the studio, Dr. VIBHA DHAWAN, Director General, TERI. Also joining us, Mr. BALENDU SHEKHAR, Advocate, Supreme Court of India. And also in the studio, we have with us young and vibrant audience. I welcome all of you to Sansad TV and thank you so much for joining us. And Dr. Dhawan, let me begin the program with you. The onus is on all of us to mitigate the impact of climate change. We have to meet our targets. Ma'am, in that context, take us through the relevance and importance of this amendment bill, given our objectives in future.
We all know that climate change is a reality. And also, we look at forest as the sink for fixing carbon dioxide. Another thing which has emerged in the recent past is when we are talking of carbon credits. And that brings us that we are not leaving forest to self-regeneration. We are also looking at them. How can we make them more productive? How do we ensure that there is more of CO2 fixation by the forests? We also are sensitive about that there are communities which are dependent on that. And therefore, how do we ensure that they are also benefited as custodians of those forests? So till few years back, we were more of don't cut a tree. But today we are looking at what fixes more of CO2. Is it a young tree or is it a tree which had already there for last so many years? And remember, trees are living things, living organisms like you and I. And as we grow old, our metabolism becomes sluggish. We have stored fat, but they have stored a lot of carbon dioxide or carbon in them. And therefore, what we are looking today is that trees or forests are regenerative systems. We are looking towards young forest. We are looking towards forest which will fix more of carbon dioxide. And of course, nothing is constant in this world, and therefore our needs are also changing. Not just because of climate change, we are also looking at changes which are required, perhaps in our lifestyles. We are looking at security reasons. We are looking at how do we ensure that there is adequate food in terms of growing agroforestry or horticultural species over there. So that is what this bill brings in.
All right, ma'am, quickly take us also through the important features, the important provisions of the bill before we talk about the impact and implications.
Well, you have already listed some of the things, but then, as I said, we are looking at that there need to be, like, you can grow horticultural species as well. Because in a way, tree is a tree. So whether you get only timber out of it or you are also getting food out of it. And therefore, horticultural species make a lot of sense. We are also looking at that some of these forests, and especially if you are looking at ecology as a whole, you are maintaining biodiversity, you are looking at ecotourism, that you are permitting that you and I can go there and enjoy. But of course, that has to be controlled. It has to be like the safaris which we have today, so that you enjoy, and in a way, because today we are living in flats. So for even our children, that they appreciate biodiversity, it is must that there should be places where we can go and show them that that is how the nature exists and how clean the entire area is. You look at water in the forest reserves, that is not as mucky as many of our rivers. So it's a self-regenerative system. The other is we are also looking at the security concerns. So therefore, we simply can't say that irrespective of where the forest is, you cannot have roads or you cannot get connected. So that's again, we have to take care of them.
All right, of course, we'll discuss threadbare the provisions of the bill. But before that, I'd also like to bring this to the notice of our viewers that one of the major objectives of the bill is to remove any ambiguity around the Supreme Court's December 12, 1996 judgment in TN Godavarman versus Union of India and others cases, where the top court directed that forests will not only include forest as understood in the dictionary sense, but also any area recorded as forest in the government record, irrespective of the ownership. Mr. Balendu Shekhar, help us understand this judgment.
See, first and foremost, before coming to the judgment, I must clarify that there are two aspects. One is tree and another is forest. And this very bill only talks about the forest. So regarding protection of tree and how we can conserve the tree, we have various provision. Almost in all the states, we have provisions. Like in Delhi, we have Delhi Preservation of Trees Act 1994 and so on and so forth. So regarding preservation of tree and how you can cut the tree, there are already provision, and on that law is very clear. However, this very bill only talks about the forest. And I must clarify one thing, that the word forest as on date has not been codified in Indian law. And law has to be very dynamic in nature. Law has to change as per the needs of the time, and as and when situation arises, law has to take care of every such thing. So therefore, this very bill only talks about the nomenclature has also been changed. It has been changed, one Sanrakshan Evam Samvardhan Adhiniyam. So forest conservation 1980 was already there in place. So conservation means Sanrakshan. However, this will also talk about Samvardhan, how we can improvise. Right. Samvardhan means Unnati. So this will also talk about this Samvardhan, Unnati. And regarding the judgment which you just asked, the judgment was also on that very line, that as the forest word, term forest was not codified in any law, therefore Honorable Supreme Court gave a dictionary interpretation of the forest. And it incorporated and included all the forest area, including government land, revenue land, private land. So suppose if you have bagicha of your own land in your village, then that may also amount as a forest. That's right. And once any particular region or any particular area comes as a forest, then in forest you cannot do any activity unless you get permission from the central government.
Precisely.
Because 1980 Forest Conservation Act 1980 clearly talks, section 2 clearly talks that any deviation in the forest area can only be permitted by the central government.
That's true.
So therefore, it was a very big restriction, very big bottleneck for everyone, that how they could proceed or how they could operate their own land. Suppose if they had planted so much tree and that very area would have been declared by the state as a forest piece of land. So absolutely, all these ambiguity was there, and therefore in view of that, and that very interpretation came in view of that Godavarman case, as you rightly pointed out. Right, so therefore there was very much need for the government to give a very clear interpretation or make that thing clear, so that people may not face any problem, or law may have some certain clarity on that aspect, and therefore this bill talks about all these aspects.
Absolutely. As you said, that change is the only constant, and our laws in the country have to be dynamic. But on that note, Dr. Dhawan, I'd also like to understand. Now, this bill talks about exempting certain types of land from the purview of the Act. It talks about fast-tracking projects of national importance. Do you think that the proposed legislation carefully balances our growth targets and also the need to protect environment?
Yeah, that's what I said in the beginning, that we have to change with the changing times. When you're talking of fast tracking, it is that there are certain areas that are of national importance, you cannot simply neglect them, that you have to build perhaps a national highway to take care of the security issues, and you can't do it because it's in the forest. Similarly, what we call today as wasteland, and I hate to use the word wasteland, I'll say wasted lands, because all these lands, they can become productive. Ultimately, what are we looking at? We are looking at the issue of climate change. We are looking at how can we fix more of carbon dioxide. And therefore, it is not that whether it is a self-regenerative land or not, and they will become self-regenerative provided you provide protection. If we are not doing that, why not to give that opportunity to someone who would like perhaps that particular unit will earn from carbon credits, but ultimately it is your environment which is getting clean. So therefore, the needs are different today, and we have to really look into, so I'll take this as a very progressive step that we have to do it. We ultimately, in our mind, forests were always for maintaining the ecosystem, providing ecosystem services, biodiversity, and so on. And one of the main things was that they are lungs, and therefore they are fixing carbon dioxide, and therefore why not to have more and more trees in all areas where we can put them. We need to have trees which are young, which fixes more of carbon dioxide, and also we have to take care of the communities which are dependent on that. So therefore, somewhere it is also that we have to give them rights to those communities to take part of the harvest and make their livelihood.
Absolutely, point well taken. And I could see the audience here nodding vociferously to you, ma'am. So let's take some questions from them. Please go ahead, introduce yourself and speak your mind.
How do we make balance between the urbanization, or we talked about the fast track projects of the central government, or the activities involving extraction of natural resources, and one more the concept I want to add is concept of jal jangal and jameen.
Mr. Shekhar, would you give us the legal view on that?
See, your query is well protected within the purview of various laws which we have. In addition, various forums, tribunals and courts are already there. And I myself is handling several such cases where I am defending various such public body and finding very tough to justify our act which we are carrying out in the field. So therefore, there are n number of acts and n number of courts and tribunals which are very much there to protect every such thing. But one thing you must keep in mind, that as long as we must confine our discussion within the ambit of today's topic. And this very topic only cover the aspect of the pragmatic difficulty which government were facing. Because I was a part of Char Dham project, and we all know that the Char Dham project was very essential for the whole nation, and it also carries the strategic significance because of the existence of China, and the kind of restriction which we were having within the ambit of law, we were really finding difficult to go ahead with the pace with which we were keen to build our road in all those territories. So therefore, there are several aspects which was desperately needed to look after immediately, and this very bill only talks about and take care only all those aspects. However, other concern what you have flagged out here, they all are already being taken care of by various laws, judgment, and all the courts forums are very much attentive and careful about all these illegalities. And they are fixing and they are coming very heavily upon all the private body as well as government authorities. So they are not leaving anyone whosoever is defying law or whosoever is not adhering to the basics given by the law or by the judgment. So all those aspects are well taken care of as on date. However, this very bill only talks about the necessity which we have at this stage, like building roads for our military purposes, doing seismic studies in the forest area, making rail, roadways, and making some additional features, because earlier for every such construction, every such activities, we were required to get a clearance from the state as well as from the center. And it was really a very tedious task for any authority to get all those approvals or permissions. So therefore, just to streamlining every such thing, this very bill is trying to take care of all those aspects.
And of course, provide clarity to the parent law. On that note, let's take another question.
In this amendment bill, we have provisions which mention that private organizations can borrow land from government by adequate government permission and with certain terms and conditions. But my concern is once we open the door of development projects in forest, it gradually but ultimately leads to urbanization and destroy forest completely.
Dr.
in that
Dhawan, where do we
particular
put
area.
that full stop? That's what the question is.
Yeah, see, when you are saying that the land will be given to any private player, it is not to build buildings. Even if we look at laws today, and like in a way, I'll cite one example in Gurgaon, they tell you that 6 meters beyond the road, you cannot construct anything. And everyone is adhering to that. So similarly, over here, they are not permitting permanent structures. They are only giving land as a CSR activity, that you can plant trees, you can take care of that building that forest for a while. It is not that you can construct anything. And I'll just like to add, when you're talking of roads, and your worry is very right, that what's going to happen, we are going to perhaps disturb our forest. It is that today we carry out very careful studies, and especially like when you are building highways, you are looking at, if you have to X number of trees, what is it in terms of CO2 fixation? What are you losing? And if you plant same number of trees 10 years down the line, what is the total loss in carbon dioxide? And let me tell you, it's not a loss, it's a gain. So what we are saying, environment is the main issue today. And therefore, you are looking at even GHG emissions from the cars, from the various vehicles, if the roads are very narrow. So somewhere you have to take care of that as well.
I'm asking about what's tribals affect by this law and bill. If
So you've read the law, the impact on the tribal areas.
That's why on the very onset I said that this very bill also talked about Sanrakshan and Samvardhan, Unnati. So this very bill broaden the horizon of the activity which may be permitted as on date. So regarding tribal, which you raised right now, within the ambit of this very bill, all those activities of the tribal can well be justified within this ambit. So it is always, I think it's a most welcoming bill for especially those kind of people.
सर वन गांव नाम के कई सारे ट्राइबल्स लाइवलीहुड होते हैं, जिसमें ट्राइबल्स अपनी लाइवलीहुड्स के लिए फॉरेस्ट पे निर्भर होते हैं. क्या उन्हें भी इसमें इस असर पड़ेगा बिल का?
नहीं, मैं वही कह रहा हूँ कि ये बिल का असर नहीं पड़ेगा. बिल से पहले क्या था कि जो जैसा मैंने बताया कि कोई भी फॉरेस्ट लैंड, किसी भी फॉरेस्ट लैंड में कोई भी एक्टिविटीज़ के लिए स्टेट एज वेल एज सेंटर दोनों के परमिशन की रिक्वायरमेंट होती थी और बहुत ही नैरो उसका एम्बिट होता था कि किस तरह की सिर्फ नॉन फॉरेस्ट्री एक्टिविटीज़ बिल्कुल ही परमिटेड नहीं थी. और ये जो बिल आया है वो सारी चीज़ों को एसिमुलेट करने की कोशिश कर रहा है कि जो एंसिलरी, जो बिल्कुल फॉरेस्ट रिलेटेड एक्टिविटीज़ है, जिससे कि कहीं ना कहीं फॉरेस्ट की उन्नति हो रही है. दैट्स व्हाई दिस बिल आल्सो टॉक अबाउट उन्नति. सो ये जहाँ कहीं भी इससे उन्नति हो सकती है, ऑफ कोर्स वो सारी चीज़ों का एसिमुलेशन है. और इसीलिए ये सारा बिल जो मुझे लगता है कि ट्राइबल और इन लोगों का जो कंसर्न था, क्योंकि पहले देखो जल जंगल और ज़मीन जो इन्होंने बात की, तो हमें ये स्वीकार करना चाहिए कि ट्राइबल सर्टेनली वो सबसे पहले हकदार हैं, क्योंकि उन्होंने जंगल को बचाया है, वो जंगल उनका घर है. तो यदि जंगल को बचाया है और आज के तारीख में यदि कानून ऐसा बन जाता है या जो भी स्थिति रही वो बना हुआ हो, जहाँ पे कि वही ट्राइबल को अपने ही एक्टिविटीज़ करने में परेशानी आ रही हो, तो उससे वो ज़्यादा आंदोलित हो रहे थे, उससे ज़्यादा सरकार को प्रतिकार महसूस करना पड़ रहा था. तो उन सारी चीज़ों को मिनिमाइज करने के लिए, उन सारी चीज़ों को टेक केयर करने के लिए ये बिल लाया गया, ताकि सब चीज़ों का एसिमुलेशन हो और जो ट्राइबल की जो ओरिजिनलिटी है वो भी प्रिजर्व रहे, और हमारी जो जंगल है जो हमारा फॉरेस्ट कवर है, जो हम टारगेट, जैसा मैडम ने बोला कि एज ऑन डेट इट्स समवेयर अराउंड 23 और 24% ऑफ द एंटायर पॉपुलेशन, व्हिच वी वांट टू इंक्रीज टू 33%. सो ऑफकोर्स वो भी हो, और हमारा जो सस्टेनेबल एग्जिस्टेंस सबका बना रहे, तो ओनली दैट एस्पेक्ट वाज प्राइमरीली kept in mind while framing this very bill.
Time for closing comments from both our guests. Dr. Dhawan, to you first.
Well, the concerns which are raised, and that is what one is trying to look into, that we must ensure that the local communities which are residing there and who are the custodians of our forests, their interests are taken care of. You must have heard joint forest management in the past, where they were permitted certain yields that they could take it and they could have their livelihoods earned from those. What we are doing today, we are actually helping them all the more. We are taking telling them how to grow, how to even earn carbon credits, so that there, in a way, we are looking at improvement in their livelihoods. And no amount of policing can work. It is more of that if they see their benefits, they are definitely going to be policing their own forests.
Absolutely. The change has to come from within.
It has to come from them.
Absolutely, ma'am. Sir, your closing thoughts, please.
My view is that this bill was very much essential and very much needed at this stage, because of the reason that now India is prospering and expanding in every way. So be it military, be it any field, everywhere we need expansion. And because of the prevailing law, we were really finding difficult to expand in that way. So I think this very will take care of every such thing. At the same time, it also take care of the private individual, private entity who earlier had grown their own so-called forest, which later on become big legal sort of neck for everyone. So all these trivial aspects which earlier existing, nothing is being streamlined in this very bill. And I think it's always good, and it will certainly prosper and give more unnati to our existing jungle, which we all are intending to
Of course.
achieve.
So the focus is on streamlining and providing clarity. On that note, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Dhawan and Mr. Balendu Shekhar.
Thank you.
Well, let me end the show with the quote of Father of Nation, Mahatma Gandhi. What are we doing to the forests of the world is but a mirror reflection of what we are doing to ourselves and to one another, unquote. Well, I'll leave you with that thought-provoking quote. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned to Sansad TV. Goodbye for now from my side.